Namaste, Namaskaram. I'm excited to introduce a new concept in Bansuri that I have been working on for some time now. I'm calling it the AFH CFB 10CT E4 VF. Why this mouthful and complicated name? I'm more of a functional reform guy and would like even a name to have a function. In this case, the name provides a description of the flute. AFH stands for an alto flute head joint, that is this part of the flute. CFB stands for carbon fiber body, and this is the main body of the flute where all the tone holes are. 10CT stands for 10 controllable tone holes, that is 10 tone holes that you can use to open and close fully or partially. The traditional Hindustani concert Bansuri has 6 controllable tone holes. The typical Carnatic flute has 7 controllable tone holes. E4 stands for the frequency of the main sa, which you get in this flute by closing all the upper hand tone holes. It's also called commonly E-bass Bansuri. VF, what is VF? Well, basically, because I've got 10 controllable tone holes, I'm using more of my fingers than the traditional Bansuri. It needs a new fingering system. And I just called it Vayu fingering. Now, Vayu is not my name. As most of you know, Vayu is the mythological god of wind, or god of wind and breath also. In the Upanishads, Vayu is also another name for the Prana Shakti, which is the most important of the Shakti or bodily functions that we have. Certainly, breathing is absolutely essential for playing a Bansuri. This fingering system, you can also call it a modified Hindustani fingering system, because basically it's closer to the Hindustani fingering system than the Carnatic fingering system, because by closing all the upper hand holes you get the sa, and by closing all the tone holes with your left and right hand you get your pa or pancham. There are so many things to say about this Bansuri, which incorporates many new innovations. One video to describe all of this will just be too long, so I decided to split the introduction into 5 parts. Episode 5, that is this particular episode, is part 1, and we'll give you a general introduction and details about the head joint. Episode 6, part 2, is about the tone hole rings. Episode 7, part 3. Here I'm testing the Bansuri for various purposes, and it's also I'm also laying out the foundations for a proper testing of any Bansuri, whether you make it yourself or you purchase it from a flute maker. Episode 8 deals with all the lower hand tone holes, and episode 9 with the upper hand tone holes. The previous 2 episodes were mainly on tone hole placements and how we use our fingers to operate on them. I hope you have had the chance to view episodes 3 and 4 of my Bansuri Innovations series. Episode 3 explains tone hole properties and finger mechanisms and what are the ideal approaches to them. Episode 4 explains in what way the current Hindustani concert Bansuri falls short of these ideals. Part 4 and 5, that is episodes 8 and 9, will address these and how to overcome and ways of overcoming these shortfalls. Before that, I want to discuss the material and construction of this new Bansuri. What materials are used and how the Bansuri is constructed is extremely important for good tonal and volume characteristics as well as playability. These things come first in order of importance. First thing you notice about this Bansuri is that it's made of 2 materials, a metal head joint and a carbon fiber body. Having a separate head joint offers many advantages. It makes the Bansuri tunable over a short range. We all know that even when we move from one room to another of a house, there's a small change in the temperature and humidity, and that causes a change in the Shruti, small change. So with a tunable one, you can change that Shruti to suit the conditions, whether it's changing rooms or whether it's going from a warm inside building to an outside band performance where it's cold or whatever. This is done by either extending the length of the Bansuri or by shortening it. Shortening, of course, increases the frequency, lengthening reduces the frequency. This also helps to adjust Shruti to other band participants. You may be performing with a few other musicians, and the other main musicians there may have a pitch that is slightly, not exactly, let's say not exactly E, maybe a little lower than E and maybe a little higher than E. With this Bansuri, you can adjust it to exactly their Shruti without trying to do adjustments like tilting the flute and all that, which can spoil other things. Having a separate head joint also allows one to adjust individual blowing variations. For example, some people might like their finger holes exactly aligned with the tone hole. Others might like the tone hole a little away, or some people might like it further in. So all these can be easily adjusted. There are two other very important advantages to having a separate head joint. You can easily change the body, take this E4 body out and use another frequency. This, for example, is a G body, and this is a G sharp body. And so you don't need a full actual flute for all these Shrutis. All you need is one head joint with different bodies for different Shrutis. Now you can also change the body to some other scale. I mean, you may not like so many tones, you might like just the basic, traditional 6-tone hole Bansuri. And you can have different bodies of different scales. You can have one that plays, that is tuned like your traditional Bansuri to Rag Yaman. You can have another one that is tuned so that it makes it easy to play a rag like Bhairavi or Bhairav, another one for Bhairav, or another one, let's say, to play Rag Kafi. You may ask, do you lose anything by way of volume or tone by having two separate parts? The answer is no, as long as the head joint fits snugly into the main body and there's no air leakage. Now, why have I chosen a combination of metal head joint and carbon fiber body? Why this combination? In the previous episode, I mentioned that all flutes, irrespective of material, suffer from a basic handicap. The first octave notes from Mandrapa to Madhya Tivrama always have a better tonal quality than higher frequency notes produced by overblowing. This can be seen visually through the frequency analysis graphs as demonstrated in episode 3. Generally, the more overtones a flute sound generates, the richer the tonal quality. Although all the flutes suffer from this, some materials or combinations of materials are better than others. For example, bamboo generally tends to be much better than any kind of plastic material, whether PVC, polycarbonate, or even Delrin, which is one of the strongest forms of plastic. What makes bamboo better is that it is very rigid. Carbon fiber is even more rigid. I have found that a metal head joint in conjunction with a carbon fiber body works extremely well in this respect. Now, how good a tone is can be somewhat subjective as tastes vary by individual. Is there a more objective way to compare the tones? One way is to do a frequency analysis comparison. We will do this in episode 7 when we take the Bansuri for a test drive. How should the head joint be constructed? Should it be the same material as the body? The first important thing is a snug fit. The outside diameter of the head joint should be the same as the inside diameter of the body at the point where the head joint fits in. Second, the part of the head joint that goes inside the body, that's otherwise called the talon, should be strong but thin. Otherwise, there will be a significant wall right over here between the head joint and the body that can impede the standing waves created within the tube. The head joint should be strong and resonant. The head joint is like the engine that drives the car body. An underperforming engine will make the car weak. You cannot run a bus with an engine of a small Maruti car. The head joint should be the strongest part of the flute. I've tried making many head joints out of carbon fiber, out of bamboo, out of metal, with lip plates or combination of these materials. Some of them work quite well, but let us face it, with my limited hand skills and simple home equipment, I can never match a professionally made one. That too, one based on the incredible amount of research that has gone into making head joints for the Western flute. That is why I have chosen a Western altoflute head joint. Metal also has the advantage of being more sonorous than any other material. That is why metal is used in most stringed instruments, including the piano and most band instruments. It also suffers from being highly conductible and expands and contracts with heat. That is why most metal-based instruments need to be tunable. There is one important aspect of the head joint that needs to be mentioned. The head joint is not cylindrical, like the flute body, but has a conical bore. This means that the diameter at both ends are different. The end that fits into the flute body, the talon, is larger in diameter than the blowhole and cork end. Theodore Boehm and others in the 19th century discovered that a conical bore head joint is best for pitch consistency through all the octaves and also has better volume characteristics. And now a conical head is not new to Indian music. In the typical Carnatic flute, the end near the blowhole is a natural node of the bamboo. The width of the flute is at its narrowest here. Careful examination will show that the flute body becomes increasingly wider the further away. In addition, if we had X-ray eyes, we will notice that the bamboo is also thicker near the node and blowhole end. This makes it more conical. So a flute or bansuri with a bamboo node at the blowhole end is naturally conical. In the picture above, I have attempted to show you what the inside of a Carnatic flute may look like by drawing a U-shaped black line. The space inside the U represents the hollow part, the space outside the walls of the bamboo. The thickness of the wall gets progressively thinner the further away from the node, making at least the head part of the flute very conical in nature inside. Although the majority of Hindu bansuri makers today use a cylindrical bamboo with a cork stopper, leading bansuri players have also used bansuris with a natural node at one end. As you can see from these pictures of Pannalal Ji and a young Hariprasad Ji. Before I close out, I would like to make a small appeal. In my retirement years, I love to do research work like this and share whatever jnanam I have with all of you. I am not compensated for this, nor am I in the business of selling flutes. I truly believe that sharing whatever little knowledge one has acquired without any profit motive is a very important part of Sanatana Dharma tradition. However, doing these videos requires considerable time and effort. Also, I'm a human being after all and requires some encouragement to continue what I'm doing. If you have enjoyed these videos and that I've given you some food for thought, one way you can provide that encouragement is to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and provide feedback in the comments sections, both positive and negative, as long as they're objective. Thank you.